Hey guys, this is Comic Uno, and today I'm doing a topic video on my 2016 pick of the weeks. So before I start talking about this topic though, of course, if you guys have any recommendations for future topic videos, please let me know in the comments below. If I answer them, that means in a couple of weeks it'll either be on Comic Uno or Comic Frontline, because I double dose my topic videos. Usually for Comic Uno I have them every Friday with my comic book reviews, and for Comic Frontline I have them every Monday or Sunday, so be sure to recommend away. So, this topic video was not suggested though, it was not recommended, but I do this every year, or I've been doing it for a couple of years now, where I kind of do an overview of the best comics, for me personally, of the year, which means every week I literally write a list in order of which comic books I like the best, and I keep it on my iPad, and that's how I do the Comic Uno episode show. And then I do a Word document where I keep all the #1 picks I had from the years, and of course I made a separate document for 2016. So I thought this would be a cool way to just talk about really great comics that came out in the year. I know someone already did comment they wanted an overview of the comics from this year, so this is how I do it. We see which company kind of got the most pick of the weeks, not saying that was the best company, but the books that I, enjoyed a lot. So let's see. Let's start out with Spider-Gwen issue 4. So there's actually a couple Spider-Gwen titles I'll be talking about because I loved Spider-Gwen this year, and she's one of my favorite characters right now in comic books. So Spider-Gwen issue 4. This was when we saw Green Goblin vs. Spider-Gwen, which was one of my favorite arcs of the year. I really liked what they did with Harry in this universe, where Harry was the first Green Goblin and not Norman Osborn. So and also attached to Gwen's origins with Peter becoming the Lizard, and how that affected Gwen and how that affected Harry. So I really enjoyed this issue and them going up against each other, and then the cliffhanger is that Harry finds out that Gwen is Spider-Gwen, or Spider-Woman, the person that Harry thought killed Peter. But then they figured out as they talk that it wasn't really their fault, and they shouldn't blame each other. And that goes into my next pick of the week, which was Spider-Gwen issue 6. And this was the forgiveness issue, where I think issue 5 for some reason went to Captain Stacy, and they had kind of this filler issue. And then the story actually did continue with Harry and Gwen with issue 6. And this is where, like I said, they make amends. They talk about that's not their fault. And I hope we get to see Harry again in the upcoming year, because I really enjoyed that arc. Now, the last Spider-Gwen issue that made it to my pick of the weeks, and that was Spider-Gwen issue 9. And this issue I had so much fun with, probably one of my favorite issues of the year, and that was the girls' night out with Gwen and Mary Jane. And this is finally just learning a little bit more about the Mary Janes, even though they've been really fun characters. They've been kind of side characters, they haven't gotten as much panel time as I wanted them to. And here, especially with Mary Jane, you learn a little bit about them, and Gwen really needs this just to be Gwen Stacy, and hopefully as Gwen learns more about herself and as a hero, we'll see that balance a little bit more of Gwen Stacy's life and her life as Spider-Woman. Now, moving on to a mini-series that I really enjoyed. That was surprised only one of the issues made the pick of the weeks, but I know that almost every issue made my top 5 in every other week, and that was Superman American Alien issue 3. And this is when Clark pretends to be Bruce Wayne. And what I really like about Superman American Alien in general is that Max Landis still writes Superman, a modern telling of Superman, but kind of on the line. He's I wouldn't say a rebel, but he's not the perfect Boy Scout in this book, which I liked. And we get to see, again, a more modern retelling of Superman as he's growing up. So I really liked what Max Landis did with this book, and if you haven't read all of Superman American Alien, it was one of the best miniseries that came out this year, so definitely go check that out. Moving on to another series I really enjoy. I did like the last volume a little bit more of this series than the current one, but I'm still really enjoying it, and I still think you guys should pick it up, and that is Silver Surfer. So Silver Surfer issue 1, this is of the new current volume for guess this was all new, all different Marvel came out for. And I really enjoyed what Dan Slott had to say here, which is why are characters important? Because the main villain of this book took away literature, took away art, and how art really shaped society. And I love how Norrin and Dawn dealt with that. And then Silver Surfer issue 3, we have more of a focus on Alicia, and I was glad to see her because we haven't really seen her in a while since the Fantastic Four. She's very good friends with Thing, and so I enjoyed that issue. So those are 2 Silver Surfer issues that made it. And now another series I feel like is always up and down. Either it's really good or it's like, alright, this could like pick up a bit. And that's Outcast. The issue that made it this year for my pick of the weeks is Outcast issue 15. And this is when we find out that Kyle's daughter potentially can be an outcast too. Kind of wish they would build on that a little bit more. Again, this book is such a slow burn, but when it's good, it's really good. And I'm still very invested in the story, but I just kind of wish it didn't take as long to get to the point, but this one really had a lot of good story, a lot of good reveals, learning a little bit more about the Outcast, and I really love the art, the small moments it really captures in the art, where you get to see like a twitch, or the way they do close-up panels is really well done in Outcast. Now, next is a series I think probably has one of the most pick of the weeks, because I love this series, and almost every week it was the best book I read, and that's Paper Girls. So Paper Girls issue 5 is Erin meeting her future self, which is really the big arc of this whole year, is Erin, younger Erin, our main character, seeing how different she is from her older Erin, and then also allowing these 2 characters to learn things about life through each other. So I loved where their arc went. Next was issue 7, where we got to see even more interaction between them, learning about them. And then issue 8, this is a great cliffhanger, where once again Erin and older Erin are they're teaming up with each other, and they're trying to find out what happened to KJ and like what's going on in this world. What does this little apple shovel have to do with anything? And then you have the cliffhanger of the hockey stick, or the field hockey stick saying, don't trust the other Erin. And I love that cliffhanger because you don't know where the story is going. Is it truthfully you can't trust the other Erin, or is this a decoy from the villain? It's a really cool mystery series, and that was just a really cool clue. Now, the last Paper Girls issue that's on here is the last issue that was released in 2016, and that was Paper Girls issue 10, where we see the girls go into the new world, and we're going to see that new chapter, which I'm so excited for this next arc. I love Paper Girls. It's one of my favorite series out there right now. Now going into Batman, so there was one issue from Scott Snyder's run that I did have on my list, and that is Batman issue 49, which I thought was just a poetic, beautiful issue, and if you never wanted to read Batman again, this would be an okay last issue, where Bruce dies, but Batman lives. So this whole story with Jim Gordon being Batman comes to a head here, where Bruce realizes that he was Batman, and he already had clues of that, and he has to become Batman again. And I really like the story between Bruce and his girlfriend. Obviously, that's something that Bruce never really could have, is an actual healthy, loving relationship. And you saw that his girlfriend also had a hard past also, and I wish that character was shown more because I really liked her. But yeah, it was a great issue, and some of Scott Snyder's best writing on Batman, in my opinion. And then we have one issue from Tom King's run, and this is a series that didn't always make Pick of the Week, but at least with this arc, always made top 5, because I love Tom King's first arc on Batman, the I Am Gotham arc, especially as we got to the end, and that's Batman issue 6. So Gotham Girl talks to Hank when Hank is dead, and we see Gotham Girl as more of a lead here, because when Gotham dies, she does take over that role of being the new character lead, which you always thought she was just kind of the supporting character, but then you find out it was Gotham Girl's story the whole time. So I loved the psychology in this issue, and I hope we get to see more of Gotham Girl, because I feel like as we got to the end of 2016, we didn't really get to see as much of her, and I thought she was one of the best new characters introduced in comics this year. So now moving on to a series that I think has massively improved this year, and that was Spider-Woman, a book that I look forward to every month because there's so many great emotional stories there. So Spider-Woman issue 4 is one of the picks, and that is Jessica giving birth, which was so much fun because we have Jessica who's literally in labor just fighting Skrulls because that's what Jessica does. She doesn't relax ever, and I thought that was a great story. And then Spider-Woman issue 7, I'm pretty sure is in the Spider-Woman crossover, which I enjoyed that crossover overall. It's Jessie and Jessica interacting. So Jessie is the Jessica of Spider-Gwen's world, and we learned that Jessie's not the villain that he was painted to be, and I like that he was more complicated, and they just had a fun interaction in that issue. And then, last but not least for Spider-Woman is Spider-Woman issue 13, which is not this week's issue, but the last month's issue, where we find out that Roger loves Jessica, and he dies, which I don't think he actually did die, but it builds up this interesting mystery of what happened to Roger, and that Roger's more than a best friend to Jessica, but does Jessica know that? And issue 14 kind of digs into that a little bit more, but I just love the reveals here, and I love that they made this literally D-list character into someone we could care about, and one of the best supporting characters in comics that I'm reading, at least. So next is a book that I'm sure would have had more on this list and had a couple issues on last year's list, but it was delayed for a good reason, but Black Magic issue 5, where we learn a little bit more about our main character's partner's wife. So we take a little bit more into the mythology. I love this book because of the coloring of the mythology itself, the main character. I love this book, but the reason it hasn't come out, and we have to wait until I think June of this coming next year, so 2017 or this coming year, and the reason we had to wait is because Nicola Scott and Greg Rucka were working on the Wonder Woman Year 1 story, which I loved also, so I completely understand why they had to put a stall on Black Magic, and now when it does come back, we won't have to wait. That's why we have to wait a little bit more for the hiatus. That way we don't have to wait like 3 months until the next issue. You kind of get the whole run of the next arc, which I appreciate, so I don't mind waiting. So I hope that Black Magic will have more issues in next year's Pick of the Week list. So next is a miniseries that I wish was the ongoing it was supposed to be, that I loved. The only issue that didn't make Pick of the Week, but really did make top 5 all the time, was The Violent issue 3, where you have the shocking ending that Mason kills his best friend. And what I loved about this story in general is that it's this guy who's dealt bad cards, who was the hero of his own story turning into a villain, how one mistake could lead into the next, and how you could be painted as the villain. And I hope that we get to see more of The Violent. I know they're like trying to plan a Kickstarter, so I definitely will be supporting that, because I loved The Violent this year. I think it was one of the best miniseries that came out this year. So now moving on to the book that probably did have the most Pick of the Weeks, is this literally was one of my favorite books that came out this year, and that was Astonishing Ant-Man. So we're going to start out with Astonishing Ant-Man issue 6. I love this issue so much. It was Cassie finally getting the role she needed, finally getting the spotlight she needed, and finding out that she becomes Stinger, that she wants to be a hero, even if she has to become the villain to ruin their plans. Now moving on to Ant-Man, or Astonishing Ant-Man issue 7, where Scott actually finds out that Cassie is Stinger. This was a very good reveal, and that Scott has to up his game as a father, that he might have made some mistakes in the past. Then we have Astonishing Ant-Man issue 10. Scott and Cassie team up, and Scott goes to jail. So that was a team up we're all waiting for many years. And then a book I loved and I've been waiting so long for is Astonishing Ant-Man issue 13, where we finally see Scott and Cassie become the team they deserve to be and express the love they have for each other. With these characters, Scott was searching for Cassie when she died, and then Cassie was searching for Scott when he died, and finally we have this moment that you had to break down these characters and make them fight to have this moment become even more beautiful than it could have been. So, love that issue. Next is issue 1 I was super surprised with, and that was Hyperion issue 1, and I wish that more people read this series. I liked it, and I thought it was a solid series and with a really good issue 1, and we learn about Doll, this new character who looks up to Hyperion, and Hyperion trying to be this normal guy who really can't be this normal guy, but learning to have more relationships with people. So I liked the first issue a lot, and like I said, I wish it was a book that more people read. So next is the only book from Batman and Robin Eternal, which I kind of forgot was this year. Kind of feels like forever ago that came out, but Harper Rose Origins. I really enjoyed that issue where we learned about her mom and just digging a little bit deeper into that character, because I feel like we see her a lot, but we never really dig into her character. She's just more there for support of other characters. So now moving on to, sadly, the only Spider-Man book here, and that was Spider-Man issue 3, and this was just a fun little team-up type thing between Miss Marvel and Miles. And then a book that I love the ending for, and I think Sam Humphries did a really good job with, and that was Star-Lord issue 6, and this was Kitty and Star-Lord finally talking about their breakup, and then issue 8 was my next pick of the week, because they fight together. They get back together and they realize maybe they rushed their relationship a bit more, or a bit too much, and they should take it slow. So I really liked how Sam Humphries kind of spotlighted and highlighted Peter and Kitty's relationship, which I was pleasantly surprised by when it did unravel and we got to see that shine, especially last year. Moving on to, sadly, the only Amazing Spider-Man book on here, or at least from the main title, and that is issue 12 of the Amazing Spider-Man, where MJ returns. And, of course, I love seeing MJ in this book, and it was cool. Even though she was working with Tony, it brought us a story with Regent, and it was just fun to see all these characters interacting again. I think you even got Harry in here. I feel like Liz had an appearance in this issue, so it was cool. Next is the only Web Warriors issue here, which started out as a really fun book, but kind of went all over the place after. And it's Web Warriors issue 7, which was just a fun team up, and you got to see punk rock Spider-Man, which was cool. And next is, a wonderful book that really turned DC Comics around, and that was DC Comics Rebirth Special issue 1, with the return of Wally West, the call back to Watchmen, which hopefully we'll get answers for in 2017. It just rejuvenized DC, and it was just a beautiful story that I think a lot of people can go back to and read and enjoy even more. Because it feels like a classic DC story that you'd search your trades for. So next is a book I loved personally, and that was the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Pink, issue 1. This is following the journeys of Kimberly after she was a Power Ranger, and I really love this miniseries because I'm a huge Kimberly fan, and it was cool seeing her as the lead and seeing her as a Power Ranger again, and what I loved is her interaction with her mom. You know, that's a story was only really touched upon in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, so just getting more character development in these books than the show could have done. And that leads me into my next Power Rangers pick, and that is the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Pink issue 3, where we get to see Kimberly fighting against the enemies and her mom teaming up with her. So next is a book that started out real strong, but I don't really know what to think about now, which you can check out my Comic Uno episode for the most recent issue of this book. But Detective Comics issue 934, which I really like the concept of this book. This is the first issue of the return of Detective Comics, and I love the characters they picked. I really enjoyed the team aspect. And then the next issue was Detective Comics issue 935, where we got to see things get back to the status quo. Stephanie and Cassandra's friendship, Tim and Stephanie's relationship, and then things kind of, again, went off rails for me a bit, but hopefully in 2017 I'll see some improvements. So next is Civil War II, issue 3, the only Civil War II book on here, but this was a very big issue, and I thought the first half of Civil War II was very strong, and then the delays made it fumble a lot. But Civil War II, issue 3, you know, I didn't expect Hulk to die from the hands of Hawkeye, and it made the motives of Captain Marvel and Tony a bit stronger, at least at that point. And then we have one of my favorite issues that came out this year, and that's Miss Marvel issue 9, where we got to see the supporting characters shine. I am a huge advocate of giving the spotlight to supporting characters, because that's the only way you're going to make your main lead stronger, is to have the people surrounding them have character, have story, and they can be interesting characters too. And we especially saw that with Zoe and Josh, where these are characters that are just like these generic cool kids, and they're just mean people, and then you get to see them as real people, and I love the development they had there, and I really hope that next year we get more spotlight for Nakia, Zoe, Josh, and even Bruno, even though Bruno I think has more spotlight than Nakia, Josh, and Zoe. Now moving on to a book that I love the concept for, and I thought issue 1 was definitely the best out of the series so far. Now Superwoman issue 1. This was one of the best issue 1s I read this year. I loved how they trolled us, where you thought Lois Lane was going to be the main character, and then you find out it's Lana. And I think Lana is definitely a character that deserves the spotlight. And I do think the series has fumbled a little throughout the book. I think they're trying to do too much, but I still love the concept, and I still love Lana as Superwoman. And the mystery of what actually happened to Lois. Is she dead? Is she not? We'll have to see in 2017. Next is definitely one of my favorite one-shots that came out this year, and that's The Fallen issue 1, one of the best things that came out of Civil War II. And it was the Hulk family, which we really haven't seen the Hulk family in a while together, dealing with Bruce's death. And I love the scene about the timer, where we get to see Bruce say, the only thing that really could get me through my anger is just setting a timer and breathing. And I loved how really all the Hulk family has to deal with their own emotions, their own anger. And they used a timer, and I thought it was a beautiful issue, and we haven't seen a story from the Hulk family or Hulk in general like that in a while. So moving on to the next issue, which is International Iron Man issue 6, which I kind of wish was just a mini-series, because I liked the first issue because it dealt with, I think her name was Cassandra. She was an interesting character, but then they didn't do anything with her, and then it led us into the real origins of Tony, which I wasn't totally sold on until I actually read the issue and enjoyed it. So I kind of wish it was just a mini-series that focused on the parents, but I really enjoyed this issue, even if the whole series as a whole wasn't exactly what I wanted. But I like this part of the arc. Now moving on to All New Wolverine Annual Issue 1, which was probably one of the funnest books that came out this year. It was Laura and Gwen switching bodies, you know, characters with two different personalities, two different universes, and seeing how they deal with each other's superpowers. I loved it. It was so fun. It was definitely, again, one of the funnest issues I read this year. Now, moving on to the Mighty Thor issue 11, which I wish the series had more pick of the weeks, but I love the character. Just the story was a bit slow this year. I think they could have done a little bit more with it, but I love this issue where we see Jane's hammer come alive, and we find out how there's another Jane, and we even see Jane reveal herself to what's her name? I'm trying to think of her name. The people that people thought that this Roz. I love that Jane was very honest with her, and I thought that was very much in Jane's personality. So moving on now to Deathstroke issue 3, where I felt the first two issues had a bit of a fumble. I wasn't really interested, but then once Rose came onto the scene, I loved this book. I thought it brought more meaning to the book. So here it was analyzing Rose and Slade's relationship, which is very complicated. And then issue 5 of Deathstroke, which was Batman analyzing Rose and Deathstroke's relationship. So I love the addition to Rose, and I think this book has improved a lot since the initial first couple of issues. Next is a series that I've been really enjoying, and if you haven't been reading this book, you totally should. And that's Kill or Be Killed issue 3. And with this, we get to see more wonderful inner monologue of our main character, who's totally a villain, but he's the hero of his own story, and analyzing the relationship he had with Kira, which at first you're like, why does he like this girl? She doesn't really seem that great for him. But then you learn a little bit about her backstory that you actually care about the character a bit more. So it's definitely flawed characters that I love about this, and just the dialogue is so beautiful and intense, and it's a great book that you should be reading if you're not. Next is Batgirl and the Birds of Prey issue 4, where we learn a little bit about Huntress's origins, where it fits the New 52 origins, but also goes back to who the character was before the New 52. So I loved how the Bensons really brought the pre-New 52 and New 52 together. Talking about that, the next one is Batgirl and the Birds of Prey issue 5. And this issue I was blown away by because it's the Bensons honoring Barbara as Batgirl and Barbara as Oracle all at the same time. And there was this big hype of who the new Oracle was, but truly it was always Barbara. And I love that. And I just loved how the Bensons wrote this issue, and it was a true love letter to Barbara, again, as Batgirl, as Barbara Gordon, and as Oracle. So next is, I'm sad that this is the only Invincible issue, but Invincible issue 131, which was really action-packed, whereas it was pretty much a fight issue, but it actually had story. It was more than just the action. It was a character-driven issue of Eve fighting for her daughter, and then also Mark fighting for his daughter. So it was the way you should do an action issue. Then next is a book I was so surprised by, because I thought it was a bit slow with every other issue until the last, where you actually got the big reveal, and that was Empress issue 7, where you find out that our main lead was actually an assassin, or like wrestler person, and not just, you know, the love interest, or just a wife, and I thought that was a really cool reveal. Then we have Jughead issue 11, a book that really improved with the new creative team. And this was just a cool story with Sabrina and Jughead. And I loved how they kind of formed their friendship, and I love how they introduced Sabrina into this world. And I hope we get to see some more Sabrina stories in 2017. Next is one of the biggest issues from this year, and that was Clone Conspiracy issue 3. We get the reveal that Ben Reilly's alive, and that was amazing. But I also really liked how Gwen and Peter interacted, Spider-Gwen and Peter, and the reveal that Spider-Gwen was, or Gwen Stacy, that we all thought was the regular Gwen Stacy, was actually just Spider-Gwen pretending to be Gwen Stacy. I thought that was really cool. So now moving on to the Mighty Captain Marvel issue 0, and I was so surprised by this because I didn't really love how Civil War 2 handled Captain Marvel's character, but this kind of gave more reasoning behind what the stuff she did, and we dug into her psyche, which I think was really needed. And now, last but not least, is the book that came out this week, which I was blown away from, and that was Supergirl Being Super issue 1. I love this book. As a Supergirl fan, I haven't read a good Supergirl story in a little while. I feel like some of the modern stuff in the last couple of years, the New 52, DC Rebirth, just hasn't had the stories that I want with Supergirl. But here, it changes Supergirl's origins by honoring Kara more, without her being in the shadow of Superman so much. And I love that this was a true coming-of-age story for Supergirl, which obviously her as a teen is a big thing for Supergirl. That's usually who she is a teen superhero. So I really like this story, and that it was an out-of-continuity story that they could kind of expand and do more with this book. So those are all my pick of the weeks from the year. Let me know in the comments below, what were your favorite titles from this year? What did you agree with me? Were there some titles you didn't agree with me? Let me know your overall thoughts about the comics that came out this year. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Don't forget to follow me on Twitter. Don't forget to like my Facebook page. Also, description below, there are links for my comic book, Like Father, Like Daughter. And don't forget to like the Facebook page of Like Father, Like Daughter. I'll see you guys later.